Hey everyone, I'm Barb Blair with Knack Studios, and today we're going to talk about painting furniture. And some of you might think that painting is not a big deal, but there are some really important things to remember when painting furniture in order to get that perfect, smooth finish. The three things I'm going to talk about today are smoothness, painting one section at a time, and less is more. The supplies that we're going to use today are by Folk Art, and we're using three different brushes. We have their wide brush, which is really great for being able to cover bigger, wider surfaces in a shorter amount of time. And then we have a small brush that is for cutting in or detailed areas. And then we have the bigger brush, which could be used for the wider surfaces as well. And these are natural bristle brushes, and so they give a really nice, beautiful, smooth finish. And then we're going to be using the Folk Art chalk paint today, and our color is called Maui Sand. It's just a really beautiful gray color that we're going to be using. And then we have our paint tray to be keeping our paint in, keep everything nice and neat. So we don't need a lot of tools when painting furniture, but it's important that your tools are good quality. We're going to move into painting now, and first of all, we're going to remove our drawer fronts so that we can actually paint the base of the cabinet and then have the nice flat drawer fronts to paint on. Now that we've removed the drawers, we're going to move on to painting, and I'm going to start with this section, and I'm going to move all the way around the piece, and then we're going to move over to doing the drawers. When I start to paint a section, I actually will cut in just like what you would cut in a wall. And that's why it's important to move one section at a time, because you're putting paint on. And you want to be able to work with that paint while it's wet so that you don't end up with like a shadow effect. Just work as quickly as you can to get all of your edges and everything cut in, and then move on to painting the bigger surface. And when I'm talking about less is more, this is actually really important when painting, because you want your first coat and all of your coats thereafter to actually become one with the piece of wood. It makes a huge difference in your finish when you have massive thick layers of paint on top of the wood versus thin layers that actually become one with the wood. It makes your finish last longer, and plus it looks a lot better. So you'll see that I don't really dip into the paint a whole lot. I try to work with as little paint as possible to keep things really smooth. We're just about finished painting this first section, so we're gonna move on to our next section. And I really wanna show you guys how to feather the paint. When you initially put the paint onto this next section, you can put it on a little bit heavier and you push with a little bit more pressure, and that's okay. But the more you get your surface covered, you want to kind of move into what I call feathering. And that is a lighter touch, and it's moving the paint to keep it nice and smooth. I want you guys not to be afraid of paint. A lot of times people get really nervous painting pieces of furniture, and I want you to be really comfortable working with paint and knowing that paint is very easily manipulated. If you feel like it's not quite right, just go back in there and start to move it around, as long as you do it when it's wet. If it starts to dry, then you're gonna start to see movement and lines, and you don't want that. So just know to really kind of keep working your paint and working with it when it's wet. Just kind of keep working this back and forth and make sure that the area is covered, and then I very gently go back with a super light pressure, and that's when we start kind of feathering it out and making sure it's nice and smooth. You don't want to work it back and forth too much though, because then you will start to have lines, because this paint dries really quickly, so you want to make sure that you just work fast. And you can work your paintbrush back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, but you always want to make sure that you finish with a nice, long, smooth stroke that goes all the way across. Otherwise, you're going to be able to see those brush movements in your paint finish. As you guys finish each section, it's really good to just really kind of check and make sure that all of your lines are nice and crisp and that there aren't any drips. Once we have the outside completely painted, I'm gonna move towards the inside of the piece of furniture. I feel like it's really important to go ahead and paint all of the inside parts that you're gonna see, because it just makes things neater and cleaner. That's why I've actually taped off everything too, because I want really straight, clean lines. So it's really important to tape off. These details really matter, whether you're doing it for yourself or for a client. Nobody wants to open up the drawer and see messy paint lines and overage. It's just not appealing. So that's why I feel like it's really important to go ahead and take the time and really paint the inside of the piece well. When you're finished painting the entire piece of furniture, it's time to move on to painting the drawer fronts. And when you're painting the drawer fronts, you want to paint them exactly as you painted the piece of furniture, using long, smooth strokes. I taped off this piece of the furniture right here because it kind of had this like Southwestern Aztec design in the wood that I really loved. And when we get to the final design plan for this piece, you'll see why I wanted to leave this design element in the piece. So that's why I taped over it in order to keep it nice and clean while I was painting. I hope you guys enjoyed learning the basics of painting today, and I hope that you're super confident now with painting a piece of furniture and you're ready to tackle your own projects. If you want to learn more about my design process and what inspires me, watch the other videos in this series.